Good morning, I'm Syd Leibovitch. Today I'm at our Sherman Oaks office to talk about why taxes have caused home prices to rise and home sales to fall. We keep talking about an issue where housing prices are too high. Let me show you why they're too high and what's happened. You ready? First, I'm going to give you a little bit of history. So prior to 1996, most of you weren't even in real estate in 1996, I was. So prior to 1996, you could sell your house and you could buy another one of equal or greater value as long as you owned your house for more than 18 months. And you could move your gain from your old house to your new house. Much like a 1031 tax exchange for commercial property or for investment property, it was called the 1034 exchange. So what would happen, and I'm just going to tell you, I went to UCLA. So I had friends from UCLA and they wanted to buy a house and they wanted to stay near UCLA, and I showed them around UCLA, and I didn't even show them. There was just no way they could buy around UCLA. So they ended up moving to the Valley. They didn't want to, but they did. They moved to Van Nuys or North Hollywood or Canoga Park. And then they bought a house. Now you're gonna laugh, but back then those homes were like $100,000. So they bought a house for like $100,000. And believe it or not, 5 or 6 years later, those homes were $280,000, $300,000, and they were making more money and doing better. So now they were able to go from a $300,000 house to a $500,000 or $600,000 house, and we would look like Encino and Sherman Oaks, and some of them decided, hey, I'll take a pool spa tennis court. We went to the North Valley. So they buy one there for, $450,000. They buy a big house, half-acre lot for $450,000, and 10 years later it's worth $600,000. And when it's worth $600,000 or whatever it was, they decide, hey, you know what? I don't want to pay for private school. I'll go to Calabasas. So they go to Calabasas. Maybe they spend $800,000 or so. They buy a house in Calabasas. Their kids graduate middle school, they graduate high school, they're like, what am I doing in Calabasas? They finally move back to Brentwood, where they wanted to be in the first place. No taxes, because they keep moving from one house to a higher price house. Unfortunately, in 1996, the tax code was changed, and it seemed okay at the time. Basically, you could sell your house if you lived there 2 years or more, 2 out of the last 5 years, so 2 years or more, and you could have an exclusion of $250,000 if you're single filing yourself, and $500,000 if you're married filing together. So now you can make up to $500,000 as a married couple and pay no taxes. And you didn't have to buy. I don't know if that's good or bad, but let me show you what ended up happening. These are the number of sales by decade. And these are the 1990s, and as you see, sales peaked at 700,000. And why is it that the sales have been so low in our decade? So why is it that sales have been so low in our decade? Even in 2021, like the best real estate market ever, we had the fewest number of sales that we've had, I don't know, I'm only going back 30 years here. But the fewest number of sales in 30 years in the best time ever. And I'm going to show you why now. Also, I want you to keep in mind, do we have more houses now than we had in 1990, or do we have less? More. They're building new houses every year. So we've got more houses, yet we have fewer sales. I'm going to show you some of the reasons. So I'm going to start with my parents' house. Now, my parents aren't selling, so don't get me wrong. I'm just using them as an example. They bought that house in 1968 for $80,000. I'm guessing they spent $2,000 on closing costs. That's probably high. And they didn't do much to it. They put in a pool, but I don't know how much a pool costs in 1968. So let's say they spent $18,000, so they're into it for $100,000. Does everybody get that? If they sold it now, they'd probably get more. I hope they don't see this video because they probably think it's worth more, doesn't everybody? And it probably is, but I'm being, conservative. If they sold it now, let's say they got $1.7 million. Hopefully their realtor says, hey, let's at least paint it and touch up the paint. They can also subtract cost of sale. So let's say they spent a few thousand in painting and cleaning it up, and the closing costs are $97,000, which nets them $1.6 million. Everybody with me? Now they take the $1.6 million and subtract $100,000, and they've got a gain of $1.5 million. They're married. They get an exclusion of $500,000. When they get that, now they've made $1 million. Now their federal tax is 23%, and the state tax is 13.3%, which makes a total of 37.1%. The taxes would be $371,000 tax due. When people hear that, they decide, hey, I'm not going to sell. You know, not my parents, they're going to live forever, but God forbid one of them passed away. Now it gets stepped up to the new value and there's no taxes. So I want to talk to you about that. We have so many homes that aren't being sold because people are waiting until they pass away. We have people like this that have lived in their house like my parents. They've lived in this house for 60 years. Why is it almost 60 years? Why is it that somebody that lives in a home for 60 years doesn't get any more of a deduction than somebody that lives in a home for 2 years? So if somebody moved every 2 years, in this scenario, they don't owe taxes. But because they've stayed so long, look how much taxes they owe. Now, my parents are very fortunate. They can afford a second home that they can live in as well. But just think about somebody like this. Just think if their kids have moved somewhere else and they want to go live near their kids. They got to pay $371,000 to live near their kids. You know, just think if they can no longer live in the house and they need to go live in like a retirement community. They got to pay $371,000 to live in a retirement community. And just think what this does to prices. If they don't sell their house, then there's not a house for a buyer to buy. That's one less house for a buyer to buy. You have millions of people in this category. I want to show you something else. I'm going to go to a higher one. This is a home I sold to somebody in 2002. It's in Brentwood. I sold it to them for $1.7 million. They're the person that came from Calabasas to Brentwood. So I sold it to them for $1.7 million. They've done some remodeling. So let's say they've done a couple $100,000 of improvements. They haven't added anything, but they did a new kitchen and stuff. So they're probably into it for $1.9 million. Right now it would sell for $3.2 million. The closing costs and maybe fixing it up and stuff would be $200,000, which leaves them with a gain of $3 million. They get their $500,000 exclusion. They now have a taxable gain of $2.5 million. They owe $925,000 to sell this house. What's going to happen? They're not going to sell. Now, you may not have any sympathy for somebody with a $3 million house. But if somebody with a $3 million house doesn't sell, then somebody with $1.5 million house can't find one, then they don't sell. Then somebody with an $800,000 condo can't find a $1.5 million house and they don't sell. And what does that do when you have fewer sales? It pushes up prices for buyers. So back here. I'm telling you, if we had just a simple change in our tax rules and it went up, or it was adjusted for, 2 years, let's have another adjustment for 10 years and 20 years. That's not fair. I'm telling you, you'd have numbers up here. It's all supply and demand. If there was more homes to sell or more homes to buy, prices would go down. If there's a scarcity of homes and more buyers at homes, prices go up. I should show you a chart of prices. I mean, give me a break. The median price in California, I don't have it with me, but I think it was like $380,000 or $400,000 in 2012, and it's $900,000 today. Give me a break. This is all because of the scarcity of homes. You want prices to go down, or you want prices to level up? You can build more homes, but why not just get the homes that are sitting empty on the market? Why does somebody have to wait for their spouse to die to sell a home?